A wealthy Japanese CEO was choking on her words in a crowded American diner, desperately calling for help in her native language while strangers stared in confusion. Then, a 7-year-old blonde girl appeared like an angel, speaking perfect Japanese with the wisdom of someone far beyond her years. But no one imagined what would come next. The elegant Japanese woman clutched her chest as waves of pain crashed through her body like tsunamis. Keiko Tanaka, 32-year-old CEO of Tanaka Industries, had conquered boardrooms across 3 continents, but tonight she was completely powerless in a small American diner in Nebraska. "Tasukete kudasai, tasukete!" She gasped desperately, her usually composed voice cracking with terror. The fluorescent lights above seemed to spin as her heart hammered irregularly against her ribs. She'd been traveling for 14 hours straight, surviving on nothing but black coffee and determination to close the biggest deal of her career. The other diners stared at her with blank, confused faces. An elderly man in a trucker cap tilted his head like he was trying to solve a puzzle. A young couple in the corner booth whispered nervously to each other, the woman pulling out her phone. The muscular cook behind the counter wiped his hands on his apron, looking helpless. "Does anyone speak Japanese?" called out Sarah Johnson, the harried waitress with tired eyes and blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd been working double shifts for months, trying to keep up with bills while raising her 7-year-old daughter Emma alone. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but none of us understand. Kokyu ga dekinai. Shinzo ga..." Keiko's words tumbled out in rapid Japanese as she struggled to breathe. Her designer silk blouse was damp with perspiration, and her perfectly manicured hands shook violently. She felt like she was drowning on dry land. That's when a small figure emerged from behind the counter, moving with surprising confidence. Emma Johnson, barely reaching Keiko's waist, had been doing her homework in the back booth while her mother worked. Her bright blue eyes held an unusual intelligence for someone so young, and her blonde curls bounced as she approached the distressed woman. "Daijubu desu ka?" Emma asked in perfect Japanese, her young voice cutting through the chaos like a bell. "Nani ga itai no desu ka?" The entire diner fell silent. Keiko's eyes widened in shock and relief as she heard her native language spoken by this tiny American girl. "Kono ko ga, Nihongo ga wakaru no?" she whispered, barely believing what she was hearing. Emma nodded seriously and turned to address the room in English. "She's having trouble breathing, and her heart hurts. I think she might be having a panic attack or something worse. Someone should call 911 right away." "How in the world do you know Japanese, sweetheart?" asked the trucker, his jaw hanging open in amazement. But Emma was already back to focusing on Keiko, speaking in gentle, soothing Japanese. "Ochitsuite kudasai, yukuri kokyu shite, watashi ga koko ni imasu." She placed her small hand on Keiko's arm with surprising authority. Sarah dropped her order pad, staring at her daughter in complete bewilderment. "Emma, baby, where did you learn to speak like that? You never told me you could." "Mama, I'll explain later," Emma said, without taking her eyes off Keiko. "Right now, Tanaka-san needs help. She says her chest feels tight and her heart is racing. I think she's been working too hard and not eating properly." The paramedics arrived within minutes, but by then, Emma had already guided Keiko through breathing exercises and helped calm her down. The 7-year-old translated everything for the medical team with the precision of a professional interpreter, using medical terms that stunned everyone present. "A blood pressure is elevated but stabilizing," reported one paramedic. "Looks like a severe anxiety attack combined with exhaustion and dehydration. She should be fine with some rest and proper care." As Keiko was being prepared for transport to the hospital for observation, she grabbed Emma's hand. "Anata wa tenshi desu," she whispered in Japanese. "You are an angel." Emma smiled shyly and responded, "Tanaka-san, genki ni natte kudasai. Please, get better soon." After the ambulance left, the diner remained eerily quiet. Sarah stood staring at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. The other customers whispered among themselves about the miracle they'd just witnessed. "Emma Catherine Johnson," Sarah said slowly, kneeling down to her daughter's eye level. "We need to have a very serious conversation about where you learned to speak Japanese like that." Emma looked up at her mother with those wise blue eyes that sometimes seemed far too old for her age. "I learned it from the anime shows, Mama. I wanted to understand what they were saying without reading the subtitles, so I taught myself. I've been practicing for 3 years now." 3 years, Sarah's voice rose in pitch. "You've been learning an entire language for 3 years and never told me." "I didn't think you'd believe me," Emma said quietly, her confidence suddenly evaporating. "You're always so tired when you come home, and I didn't want to bother you with something that seemed silly." Sarah felt her heart break into a million pieces. Her brilliant daughter had been hiding this incredible gift because she didn't want to burden her overworked mother. "Oh, baby, nothing you do could ever be silly or bothersome to me. You just saved that woman's life." The cook, a burly man named Frank, who'd been working at the diner for 15 years, walked over with tears in his eyes. "In all my years, I ain't never seen nothing like that. That little girl's special, Sarah. Real special." Emma tugged on her mother's uniform. "Mama, do you think Tanaka-san will be okay? She seemed really scared." "I think she'll be just fine, thanks to you," Sarah said, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "But Emma, how do you know her name is Tanaka?" "She introduced herself when she was trying to ask for help," Emma explained matter-of-factly. "She said, 'Watashi wa Tanaka Keiko desu,' before she got too scared to talk properly. That means, 'I am Keiko Tanaka' in Japanese." Sarah shook her head in amazement. Her 7-year-old daughter had not only learned an entire foreign language in secret, but had done so well enough to handle a medical emergency. She looked around the diner, at the faces still staring at them in wonder, and felt a mixture of pride and worry. What other surprises was her extraordinary daughter hiding? 3 days later, Keiko Tanaka returned to Murphy's diner, but this time she looked completely different. Gone was the distressed, vulnerable woman from that terrifying night. In her place stood a composed CEO wearing an impeccably tailored navy business suit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's cars. The lunch rush was in full swing when she entered, and Sarah nearly dropped a plate of meatloaf when she spotted the familiar face. "Oh my goodness, you're back! How are you feeling?" "Much better, thanks to your daughter," Keiko replied, in accented but perfect English. Her dark eyes scanned the room until they found Emma sitting in the back booth, working on what appeared to be math homework. "Is that her, the little angel who saved my life?" Sarah nodded, wiping her hands on her apron nervously. "That's my Emma. She's been asking about you every day, wondering if you were okay." Keiko walked over to Emma's booth with the graceful confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention in boardrooms. Emma looked up from her worksheet, her face brightening with recognition. "Tanaka-san, genki ni narimashita ka?" Emma asked, setting down her pencil. "Did you get better?" "Hi, okage-sama de," Keiko replied, sliding into the booth across from Emma. "Yes, thanks to you. May I sit with you for a moment?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Are you feeling all better now? You were really scared the other night." "I was terrified," Keiko admitted, switching back to English so Sarah, who was hovering nearby, could understand. "But you helped me stay calm. Your Japanese is remarkable, Emma. Where did you learn to speak so fluently?" "From anime, mostly," Emma said, blushing slightly. "I started watching shows like My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away when I was 4. At first, I just liked the pretty pictures, but then I wanted to know what they were saying without reading the words at the bottom." Keiko leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "And you taught yourself? No classes or tutors?" "I used YouTube videos and some apps on Mama's old phone," Emma explained. There are lots of teachers online who explain things really well. I made flashcards for the writing symbols too, but those are harder than speaking. Emma, sweetheart, show her your notebook, Sarah said, pride evident in her voice despite her exhaustion. She'd been thinking about that night constantly, realizing how little she really knew about her daughter's capabilities. Emma opened her backpack and pulled out a composition notebook filled with neat rows of hiragana, katakana, and kanji characters. The pages were covered with vocabulary lists, grammar notes, and even small drawings to help remember meanings. Keiko flipped through the pages with increasing amazement. This is university-level work, Emma. Most adults struggle to reach this level of proficiency. You've essentially become bilingual on your own. Really? Emma's eyes lit up. I always worry that I'm making mistakes because I don't have anyone to practice with. Your pronunciation is nearly perfect, Keiko assured her. You have a natural gift for languages. Have you tried learning any others? Emma shook her head. Spanish would probably be more useful here, but Japanese is more fun. The culture is really interesting too. Did you know that in Japan they have special trains that go super fast and, as Emma chattered excitedly about Japanese culture, Keiko found herself studying the child more closely. There was something extraordinary about her beyond the language ability. The way she processed information, made connections, and expressed complex thoughts suggested an intelligence far beyond her 7 years. Emma, Keiko interrupted gently. What grade are you in at school? 2nd grade, Emma replied. But it's kind of boring. We're still learning things I already know. Sarah sighed, joining the conversation during a brief lull in customers. The school says she's academically advanced, but they don't have programs for that. They just give her extra worksheets to keep her busy. Keiko felt a familiar pang in her chest. She remembered being Emma's age, sitting in classrooms where she felt utterly alone and misunderstood. Her own parents had been too busy building their business empire to notice their daughter's exceptional abilities until it was almost too late. Has anyone ever tested Emma's IQ? Keiko asked carefully. We can't afford that kind of testing, Sarah admitted, her cheeks reddening with embarrassment. Between rent, groceries, and Emma's basic needs, there's nothing left over for extras. I've been thinking about asking the school counselor, but you're worried they'll want to skip her ahead and she'll miss out on being a normal kid, Keiko finished, reading the conflict in Sarah's eyes. Sarah nodded gratefully. Exactly, she's already different enough. I don't want her to feel more isolated. Keiko pulled a business card from her briefcase and handed it to Sarah. I'd like to help if you'll let me. I run a technology company with offices in 12 countries. I also sponsor educational programs for gifted children. Sarah stared at the card, her eyes widening as she read the corporate information. You're the CEO of Tanaka Industries, the tech company that makes all those computer chips? Among other things, yes, Keiko said modestly. Emma saved my life, Sarah. I'd like to return the favor by giving her opportunities to develop her gifts properly. Emma looked between the two adults, sensing the tension. Mama, what's wrong? Did I do something bad? No, baby, you did something wonderful, Sarah said, pulling Emma close. Tanaka-san wants to help you with your learning. Like a real Japanese teacher, Emma asked hopefully. Even better, Keiko smiled. I have connections with some of the best educational specialists in the country. They could assess Emma's abilities and recommend programs that would challenge her appropriately. Sarah bit her lip, clearly torn. That sounds expensive. It would be my gift to Emma, Keiko said firmly. She gave me something precious, my life. I'd like to give her something precious in return, her future. The diner had grown quiet around them, with other customers unconsciously leaning in to listen to the conversation. Frank, the cook, had stopped flipping burgers and was watching through the service window. I don't know. Sarah said hesitantly. I appreciate the offer, I really do, but I'm not comfortable accepting charity. We get by just fine on our own. Emma looked up at her mother with those wise blue eyes. Mama, it's not charity if I earned it by helping someone, right? That's just people being grateful. Keiko felt her heart clench at the child's simple wisdom. Emma's absolutely right. In Japan, we believe in on, the concept of debt and gratitude. When someone does something significant for you, you have an obligation to repay that kindness. Emma saved my life. Allowing me to help her education would actually be helping me fulfill my duty. Sarah looked down at her daughter, seeing the hope and excitement in her face. She thought about the endless double shifts, the bills that never seemed to get smaller, and the constant worry that she wasn't giving Emma everything she deserved. Can I think about it? Sarah asked finally. Of course, Keiko said, standing gracefully. But don't think too long. Gifted children need proper stimulation, or they can lose their enthusiasm for learning. Trust me, I know from experience. As Keiko prepared to leave, Emma tugged on her sleeve. Tanaka-san, arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you for wanting to help me. Keiko knelt down to Emma's level and spoke in Japanese. Emma-chan, watashi ga anata ni kansha shite imasu. No, Emma, I'm the one who's grateful to you. After Keiko left, Sarah stood staring at the business card, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. Around her, the diner buzzed with excited whispers about what they'd just witnessed. Frank appeared at her elbow with a cup of coffee. Sarah, honey, that little girl of yours just got offered the chance of a lifetime. I know, Sarah whispered. That's what scares me. That evening, after the diner closed, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, staring at Keiko's business card, while Emma practiced writing kanji characters at the coffee table. Their small apartment above the diner was cramped but clean, filled with Emma's drawings, library books, and makeshift study materials. Mama, are you still worried about Tanaka-san? Emma asked without looking up from her notebook. She was carefully copying the character for Dream, Yoon, with remarkable precision for a 7-year-old. Sarah sighed, running her fingers through her hair. I'm not worried about her, baby. I'm worried about us. What if she gets tired of helping? What if we become dependent on her generosity and then she disappears? Emma set down her pencil and climbed onto her mother's lap, something she rarely did anymore since declaring herself almost grown up on her last birthday. Did you know that in Japanese culture, when someone saves your life, they become responsible for you forever? Where did you learn that? Sarah asked, surprised. From this documentary about samurai honor codes, Emma said matter-of-factly. It's called Giri, Duty and Obligation. Tanaka-san isn't just being nice, Mama. She really believes she owes me. Sarah hugged her daughter tighter, marveling once again at the depth of knowledge housed in such a small body. Sometimes I forget how smart you are. I'm not that smart, Emma protested. I just like to learn things. Remember when I went through my dinosaur phase and memorized all their names? You didn't think I was a genius then. That's because most kids go through a dinosaur phase, Sarah laughed. But most kids don't teach themselves foreign languages or translate medical emergencies. A soft knock at their apartment door interrupted the conversation. Sarah frowned. They rarely had visitors, especially this late. She peered through the peephole and gasped. It's her. It's Tanaka-san. Emma scrambled off her mother's lap and ran to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly. A sleek black car sat parked outside the diner, looking completely out of place in their modest neighborhood. Sarah opened the door to find Keiko holding a large gift basket and looking slightly uncomfortable. I'm sorry to bother you at home. I realized after I left that I was probably overwhelming you earlier. I wanted to explain myself better. Please, come in, Sarah said, stepping aside despite feeling self-conscious about their humble home. Can I get you some coffee? Tea? Mm, tea would be lovely, thank you, Keiko said, taking in the apartment with interest rather than judgment. Her gaze lingered on Emma's study area, noting the careful organization of books, papers, and art supplies. Emma, may I see more of your Japanese writing? Emma eagerly brought over several notebooks, chattering about her favorite characters and their meanings. Keiko settled on the small couch, genuinely engrossed in Emma's explanations. Sarah busied herself making tea, listening to her daughter speak with more confidence and enthusiasm than she'd ever heard before. It was like watching Emma come alive in a way she never had at school or even at home. Your stroke order is perfect, Keiko told Emma, examining a page of complex kanji. Even many native speakers struggle with proper brush technique. Who taught you about the traditional way of writing? YouTube again, Emma admitted shyly. There's this old calligraphy master who posts lessons. He explains the history behind each character and why the strokes go in certain directions. Keiko shook her head in amazement. Emma, I want to be completely honest with you and your mother about why I'm here. When I was your age, I was a lot like you. Too smart for my classes, curious about everything, learning things on my own because school was boring. Sarah returned with 3 mugs of tea and settled into the armchair across from them. What happened? My parents were building their business and didn't notice how isolated I was becoming, Keiko continued. I grew frustrated, then angry, then eventually I just stopped trying. By the time they realized I needed special educational support, I'd already developed some difficult behaviors. Emma leaned forward, intently. What kind of behaviors? I became arrogant and dismissive of other people. I thought I was smarter than everyone, so I stopped listening to teachers, stopped making friends, stopped caring about anything except proving how superior I was. Keiko's voice grew quiet. It took years of therapy and a lot of hard work to learn how to connect with people again. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying Emma might? I'm saying that gifted children need proper guidance and challenges, or they can become very lost, Keiko said gently. Emma is different from how I was, though. She's naturally empathetic and kind. She learned Japanese not just for herself, but to help you understand the shows you watched together. She saved my life not for praise, but because someone needed help. Emma looked between the 2 adults, sensing the gravity of the conversation. I don't want to become mean, Mama. I like helping people. And that's exactly why I think you'll thrive with the right support, Keiko said, reaching into the gift basket. I brought something for you, Emma. She pulled out a beautifully bound book of Japanese folk tales, written entirely in Japanese characters. Emma's eyes grew wide with delight. For me? Really? Emma breathed, accepting the book reverently. Really? But I have a confession. It's also a test, Keiko admitted with a smile. If you can read and understand those stories, then I'll know for certain that your language abilities are as extraordinary as I suspect. Emma immediately opened to the first page and began reading aloud in Japanese, her pronunciation clear and confident. Both women listened in stunned silence as the 7-year-old effortlessly translated the tale of the bamboo cutter and the moon princess. That settles it, Keiko said when Emma finished the first story. Sarah, your daughter isn't just gifted. She's what we call profoundly gifted. Her language acquisition abilities are probably in the top fraction of 1% of the population. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. I knew she was special, but I had no idea how special. The question now is what we do about it, Keiko said seriously. Continuing to let Emma coast in regular 2nd grade would be like asking a concert pianist to practice Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star every day. She'll lose her love of learning. Emma looked up from the book, her face serious. Mama, I do get really bored at school. Sometimes I pretend to not know answers, so the other kids won't think I'm weird." Sarah's heart broke a little more. Her brilliant daughter was already learning to hide her gifts to fit in. "What exactly are you proposing, Keiko?" "I'd like to arrange for comprehensive testing with the best educational psychologists in the country. Then, based on their recommendations, we explore options, specialized schools, accelerated programs, maybe even university courses for certain subjects." "University?" Sarah gasped. "She's 7 years old." "Intellectually, she's functioning far above that level," Keiko explained. "But emotionally and socially, she's still 7. That's why we need experts to design a program that challenges her mind while protecting her childhood." Emma climbed back onto her mother's lap with the book of stories. "Mama, would it be okay if I got smarter? I promise I won't become mean like Tanaka-san did when she was little." Keiko laughed softly. "I wasn't mean when I was little, Emma. I became mean when I was older because no one helped me learn how to use my gifts properly." Sarah looked down at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Keiko's earnest expression. The weight of the decision felt enormous. Everything in their simple life was about to change, one way or another. "If I agree to this," Sarah said slowly, "I have conditions. Emma comes first, always. If any of this makes her unhappy or changes who she is as a person, we stop immediately." "Agreed," Keiko said without hesitation, "and I want to be involved in every decision. I may not have fancy degrees, but I'm her mother, and I know her better than any specialist ever will." "Absolutely." Sarah took a deep breath. "And one more thing. I pay you back eventually somehow. I don't care if it takes 20 years. This isn't charity. It's an investment in Emma's future that I'll repay with interest." Keiko smiled, recognizing the fierce pride and love of a protective mother. "Deal. But Sarah, you're already paying me back every day by raising such an extraordinary human being." Emma squeezed her mother tight. "Does this mean I can learn more Japanese? And maybe Chinese too?" Both women laughed at the child's immediate enthusiasm for taking on even more challenges. "Let's start with getting your Japanese to fluent level first," Keiko suggested. "Then we'll see what other adventures await." As Keiko prepared to leave that night, Emma ran to her and hugged her around the waist. "Arigatou gozaimasu, Tanaka-san. Anata wa watashi no hiro desu." Keiko felt tears spring to her eyes as the little girl declared her a hero in perfect Japanese. She knelt down and hugged Emma back. "Ie, Emma-chan. Anata ga watashi no hiro desu. You are my hero." After Keiko left, Sarah tucked Emma into bed and sat watching her daughter read the Japanese stories with obvious joy. Everything was about to change for them, but for the first time in years, Sarah felt hope instead of fear about the future. Outside, Keiko sat in her car for several minutes before driving away, thinking about the conversation. She'd offered to help Emma's education, but she suspected that this remarkable child was going to teach her just as much in return. The next chapter of all their lives was about to begin. 2 weeks later, Emma sat in the most sophisticated office she'd ever seen, 40 floors above downtown Chicago. Dr. Margaret Chen, one of the country's leading experts in gifted child psychology, observed Emma through one-way glass as the 7-year-old worked through a series of assessments that would typically challenge high school students. "This is unprecedented, Doctor," Chen whispered to Keiko and Sarah, who stood beside her watching Emma effortlessly solve complex pattern recognition puzzles. "I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've never seen anything quite like her." Sarah gripped the observation room railing, her knuckles white with tension. "Is that good or bad?" "It's extraordinary, Doctor," Chen replied, making notes on her tablet. "Emma's IQ is measuring somewhere north of 180. To put that in perspective, Einstein's was estimated around 160. But more remarkable than her raw intelligence is her emotional maturity and linguistic processing speed. In the testing room, Emma had moved on to a language acquisition simulation. She was being taught basic phrases in Mandarin, Hindi, and Arabic simultaneously, then asked to identify patterns and construct new sentences. Within 30 minutes, she was holding simple conversations with native speakers via video chat. "How is this possible?" Sarah asked, feeling simultaneously proud and terrified. Keiko watched Emma with a mixture of awe and recognition. Some children are born with brains that function differently. Emma's neural pathways for language and pattern recognition are probably structured unlike 99.9% of the population. Dr. Chen nodded. What we're seeing here suggests Emma has what we call savant-level linguistic abilities, but without the typical social or developmental challenges that usually accompany such gifts. She's essentially a genius with the emotional intelligence of a well-adjusted child. The testing continued for 3 more hours. Emma tackled advanced mathematics, logical reasoning, creative problem-solving, and memory challenges. Through it all, she maintained her natural curiosity and infectious enthusiasm, chatting with the testers as if they were old friends. "Mama, this is so much fun," Emma called out during a break, waving to Sarah through the glass. "Doctor, Chen taught me how to say hello in 7 different languages." When the assessments finally concluded, Dr. Chen invited all 3 to her private office. Emma immediately gravitated toward a wall of books, running her fingers along the spines and reading titles in multiple languages. "I'll be direct," Dr. Chen began, settling behind her desk. "Emma needs immediate educational intervention. Her current school environment isn't just inadequate, it's potentially harmful to her intellectual development." Sarah felt her stomach drop. What kind of intervention? "Ideally, a completely customized educational program. Traditional schools, even gifted programs, won't be sufficient. Emma needs university-level instruction in her areas of strength, combined with age-appropriate social activities and emotional support." "University," Sarah repeated weakly. Emma looked up from the books. "Would I have to leave home, Mama?" Dr. Chen smiled reassuringly. "Not necessarily. We can arrange for remote learning with top universities, private tutoring, and specialized language immersion programs. The key is keeping Emma intellectually challenged while maintaining her connection to normal childhood experiences." Keiko leaned forward. "What would something like that cost? For the level of customization Emma requires? Probably $200,000 annually." The room fell silent. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Even with Keiko's generous offer, that kind of money was incomprehensible to a diner waitress. "However," Dr. Chen continued, "there are foundations and organizations that sponsor exceptional children. With Emma's test scores, she would qualify for full scholarships to several programs." "What's the catch?" Sarah asked, her maternal instincts on high alert. Dr. Chen exchanged a meaningful look with Keiko. "The organizations that can afford to sponsor children like Emma usually expect something in return. Research participation, public appearances, academic competitions. Emma would become, in essence, a case study." Emma had been listening intently from her spot by the bookshelf. "Would I become famous?" "Possibly," Dr. Chen admitted. "Children with your abilities often attract media attention. The question is whether your family is prepared for that level of scrutiny." Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. The city sprawled below them, vast and intimidating. "I need to think about this. This is all happening so fast." "Of course," Keiko said gently. "Take all the time you need, but Sarah, we can't wait too long." Every day Emma spends understimulated is a day of potential lost. That evening, back in their small apartment, Emma worked on her new Japanese storybook while Sarah stared at Dr. Chen's comprehensive report. The technical language was overwhelming, but the conclusions were clear. Emma was operating on a level that defied normal educational approaches. "Mama, are you scared?" Emma asked, without looking up from her reading. Sarah sighed. "Terrified, baby. What if I make the wrong choice? What if all this attention changes you into someone I don't recognize?" Emma set down her book and climbed onto the couch next to her mother. "Do you remember when I was 5 and wanted to learn how to ride a bike? Of course. You practiced for weeks until you got it perfect. And you were scared I'd fall and get hurt, but you let me try anyway because you knew I needed to learn." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "This is a little more complicated than learning to ride a bike, Emma." "Is it, though?" Emma asked with her characteristic directness. "You taught me that when we have gifts, we should use them to help people. Maybe this is how I'm supposed to help people, by showing other kids like me that it's okay to be different." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Keiko's name appeared on the screen. "I'm sorry to call so late," Keiko said, "but I've been thinking about Emma's situation all day. I have a proposition that might address your concerns." "I'm listening." "What if we started small? Instead of diving into a full program immediately, what if I arranged for Emma to spend a few hours each week with private tutors? We could test how she responds to advanced instruction without committing to anything permanent." Sarah felt a flutter of hope. "That sounds more manageable. And Sarah, I want you to know that my interest in Emma isn't purely altruistic. I've been struggling with some major decisions about my company's future, and watching Emma tackle challenges with such joy and curiosity has reminded me why I fell in love with learning in the first place." After hanging up, Sarah looked at her daughter, who had returned to her Japanese stories. "Emma, how do you feel about trying some special classes? Just a few hours a week to start?" Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? With real teachers who know about languages and hard math?" "Really? But if you don't like it, or if it makes you unhappy, we stop immediately. Deal? Deal!" Emma launched herself into her mother's arms. "Mama, I promise I won't let being smart make me mean or weird." As Sarah tucked Emma into bed that night, her daughter asked one more question. "Mama, do you think Tanaka-san was lonely when she was little like me?" Sarah paused, struck by her daughter's insight. "Why do you ask?" "Because she gets this sad look in her eyes sometimes when she talks about being smart as a kid. I think maybe she didn't have anyone who understood her." Sarah kissed Emma's forehead, marveling once again at her daughter's emotional intelligence. "You know what? I think you might be right about that." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sarah sat by her window, looking out at the quiet street below. Tomorrow she would call Keiko and take the first step toward a future she couldn't imagine. For the first time since this all began, she felt more excited than afraid. 3 months into Emma's specialized tutoring program, everything seemed to be going perfectly. Emma thrived under the challenge of advanced coursework. Her Japanese had reached near fluent levels, and she'd begun studying Mandarin and advanced mathematics with obvious delight. Sarah watched her daughter bloom with a mix of pride and amazement. But Keiko had been acting strangely lately. "Tanaka-san seems different," Emma observed one afternoon as they walked home from the community center where her tutoring sessions were held. "She's been asking me lots of questions about my family." Sarah frowned. "What kind of questions?" "About my daddy, mostly. Where he is, what he was like, if I remember him." Emma kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk. "I told her I don't remember much because I was really little when he left, but she keeps asking." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "Emma, you don't have to answer personal questions if they make you uncomfortable, even from Tanaka-san." They don't make me uncomfortable," Emma said thoughtfully, "but they make her sad, really, really sad." That evening, Sarah called Keiko to discuss Emma's progress, but found herself asking about the personal questions instead. "I'm sorry," Keiko said, and Sarah could hear genuine remorse in her voice. "I didn't mean to make Emma uncomfortable. It's just, there's something I need to tell you both, but I'm not sure how to say it." "What is it?" There was a long pause. "Can I come over? This isn't something I can explain over the phone." An hour later, Keiko sat in their small living room looking more nervous than Sarah had ever seen her. Emma curled up in her favorite chair with a book, but Sarah noticed she wasn't turning any pages. "7.5 years ago," Keiko began slowly, "I was in Nebraska on business. I had a relationship with someone. It was brief, but it meant more to me than I realized at the time." Sarah felt her heart rate quicken. "Keiko, what are you saying?" "The man's name was David Johnson. He was working construction on a building project my company was funding. He was kind, funny, incredibly intelligent, despite having no formal education." Keiko's hands trembled slightly. "We spent 3 weeks together before I had to return to Japan." The book slipped from Emma's hands and hit the floor with a loud thud. Both women turned to look at her, but Emma sat frozen, staring at Keiko with wide eyes. "I didn't know he had a daughter," Keiko continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know about you, Emma. If I had known—" Sarah stood up abruptly, her mind reeling. "Are you telling me that you think David Johnson is Emma's father? That you had an affair with my daughter's father?" "Not an affair," Keiko said quietly. "David told me he wasn't in a relationship. He said he was single, working to support himself while he figured out his next steps in life." "He lied," Sarah said bitterly. "He was living with me. We'd been together for 2 years. I was 6 months pregnant with Emma when he disappeared without a word." Emma suddenly spoke up, her voice small and confused. "Tanaka-san, did you know my daddy?" Keiko turned to face Emma, tears streaming down her face. "I think I might have, sweetheart, and I think he might have left because he was confused and scared, not because he didn't love you." "That's not possible," Sarah protested, but even as she said it, pieces were clicking together in her mind. David's sudden interest in Asian culture during those last few weeks, his mysterious phone calls, the way he'd seemed distant and conflicted before he vanished. Keiko reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. "This is the only picture I have of him." Sarah took the photo with shaking hands and gasped. It was definitely David, but younger and happier than she remembered seeing him in those final months. In the picture, he was laughing at something off camera, his arm around a younger version of Keiko. Emma climbed down from her chair and took the photo from her mother. She studied it intently, tracing David's face with her finger. "He looks happy," she said simply. "He was," Keiko whispered. "We both were, for those 3 weeks. But when my father discovered the relationship, he threatened to disown me if I didn't return to Japan immediately. He said David was beneath our family's social status." Sarah sank back onto the couch, overwhelmed. "So you just left, without telling him?" "I was 24 and completely dependent on my father's approval. I wrote David a letter explaining everything, but I never sent it. I convinced myself it was better to make a clean break." Keiko's voice broke. "I had no idea he had a pregnant girlfriend. I had no idea I was destroying a family." Emma looked between the two women, her young mind processing the implications. "So when my daddy left us, it wasn't because he didn't want me." "Oh, Emma," Keiko said, dropping to her knees in front of the child. "I think your father left because he was torn between 2 worlds and didn't know how to choose. That doesn't make it right, but it might explain why he ran instead of fighting for what mattered." Sarah felt anger and grief warring in her chest. "This is why you've been helping us? Guilt over breaking up my family?" "Initially, maybe," Keiko admitted. "When I realized who Emma was, I felt like I'd been given a chance to fix the damage I'd caused. But Emma is extraordinary in ways that have nothing to do with guilt or obligation. She would be remarkable regardless of who her father is. Emma walked over to her mother and took her hand. "Mama, are you angry at Tanaka-san?" Sarah looked down at her daughter, seeing David's eyes staring back at her with that same direct, unflinching gaze. "I don't know what I am, baby. This is a lot to process." "I understand if you want me to leave," Keiko said, standing slowly. "I understand if you don't want my help anymore. But please don't punish Emma for my mistakes." Emma surprised them both by walking over to Keiko and hugging her. "I'm not mad at you, Tanaka-san. You didn't know about me, and you were scared of disappointing your daddy. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're scared." Keiko broke down completely, holding Emma close while tears poured down her face. "You are so much better than I deserve, Emma-chan." Sarah watched her daughter comfort the woman who had unknowingly destroyed their family 7 years ago and felt something shift in her heart. Anger was easier than understanding, but Emma was right. People made mistakes when they were scared. And Keiko had spent the last few months trying to repair damage she hadn't even known she'd caused. "Keiko," Sarah said quietly, "do you know where David is now?" Keiko looked up hopefully. "I've been trying to find him. I hired a private investigator last month. David Johnson disappeared from Nebraska about 7 years ago and hasn't used his social security number since. It's like he vanished completely." Emma pulled back from Keiko's embrace. "Maybe he's scared to come back because he thinks we're mad at him." "Maybe he is, sweetheart," Sarah said softly. "But that's something we'll worry about later. Right now, I need to decide what this means for us going forward." Keiko wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Sarah, I meant what I said. If you want me to walk away, I will. But I hope you'll let me continue helping Emma. She deserves every opportunity, regardless of what happened between her father and me." Sarah looked at her daughter, who was watching both adults with that wise, patient expression she wore when she was thinking hard about something important. "What do you think, Emma? Do you want to keep learning with your special teachers?" Emma nodded immediately. "Yes, but only if you're not sad about it, Mama, and only if Tanaka-san promises to help us find my daddy someday." Keiko met Emma's gaze and nodded solemnly. "I promise, Emma. If it's humanly possible to find him, I will." As the three of them sat in the small apartment, surrounded by the debris of revealed secrets and complicated emotions, Sarah realized their story was far from over. They'd thought they were writing a tale about education and opportunity, but they were actually uncovering a mystery that went to the heart of who they all were. The biggest revelations were yet to come. 6 months later, the phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning while Emma was at her advanced linguistics seminar at Northwestern University. Sarah was working her morning shift at the diner when Keiko burst through the door, her usually composed demeanor completely shattered. "I found him," Keiko said breathlessly, clutching a manila folder to her chest. "Sarah, I found David." Sarah set down the coffee pot she was holding, her hands suddenly shaking. "Where?" "Seattle. He's been there for 6 years, working under the name Michael Davis. Keiko paused, seeming to struggle with her words. "He's been trying to find you and Emma this entire time." The diner seemed to fade away around them as Sarah stared at Keiko in shock. "What do you mean, trying to find us?" Keiko opened the folder with trembling fingers, revealing pages of documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. "My investigator found these in his apartment." "Sarah, David has been hiring private investigators for years, searching for you both. He has pictures of Emma from her school website, newspaper clippings about local events in case you were mentioned, even records of every Sarah Johnson in the United States." Sarah sank into the nearest booth, overwhelmed. "I don't understand." If he was looking for us, why couldn't he find us? We never moved. We never changed our names. Because, Keiko said gently, sitting across from her, he was looking for Sarah Wilson. Sarah's blood ran cold. My maiden name, but I changed it legally when Emma was born. I wanted her to have her father's name, even though he'd left, Keiko finished. David doesn't know you changed your name. He's been searching for Sarah Wilson and Emma Wilson for 7 years. Sarah put her face in her hands, trying to process the implications. All this time he's been looking for us. There's more, Keiko said softly. According to the investigator's report, David left Nebraska because he thought you'd asked him to go. Someone called him and told him you'd discovered his relationship with me and wanted him out of your life forever. Sarah looked up sharply. That's impossible. I never knew about you until 3 months ago. Keiko pulled out a sheet of handwritten notes in David's distinctive handwriting. He wrote down what the caller said, word for word. Sarah knows about your Japanese girlfriend. She's disgusted and wants you gone. If you really love her and the baby, you'll leave them alone to build a better life without you. Sarah's hands shook as she read David's desperate scribblings. In the margins, he'd written things like, Sarah deserves better, and maybe they're right, and I've ruined everything. Someone deliberately broke us apart, Sarah whispered. But who? Who would do that? Keiko's face darkened. I have a theory, but you're not going to like it. My father, Hiroshi Tanaka, was violently opposed to my relationship with David. When I refused to come home immediately, he threatened to do whatever it took to end things. You think your father called David and pretended to be me? I think he had someone do it. My father is ruthless when it comes to protecting what he sees as the family's interests. If he discovered David had a pregnant American girlfriend, he would have seen that as leverage to use against both of you. Sarah felt rage building in her chest like a wildfire. Your father destroyed my family to protect your reputation. I think so, Keiko said, tears streaming down her face. And Sarah, there's something else. The reason I came to America, the reason I was in that diner the night Emma saved me. I was running away from an arranged marriage my father had set up. I'd finally worked up the courage to defy him, and I ended up in the exact place where I could discover what he'd done all those years ago. Sarah stared at Keiko, seeing the pieces of an impossible puzzle clicking together. You think it was fate? I think Emma was meant to save me that night, so we could find the truth and fix what was broken, Keiko said simply. That little girl has been fixing broken things her whole life. First, by learning Japanese to help you understand the shows you watched together, then by saving my life, and now by bringing all of us together to heal old wounds. At that moment, Emma burst through the diner door, her face glowing with excitement from her university seminar. Mama! Tanaka-san! You'll never believe what I learned about ancient Chinese poetry today. She stopped mid-sentence, seeing the adults' tear-stained faces and the documents spread across the table. What's wrong? Sarah and Keiko looked at each other, then at the remarkable child who had orchestrated their reunion without even knowing it. Emma, sweetheart, Sarah said gently, we found your daddy. Emma's textbook slipped from her hands, scattering across the diner floor. You found him. Is he okay? Where is he? He's in Seattle and he's okay, Keiko said. But more importantly, Emma, he's been looking for you and your mama this whole time. He never stopped trying to find you. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. I knew it. I knew he didn't just stop loving us. Sarah pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. You were right, baby. He never stopped loving us. Someone tricked him into leaving, but he's been searching for us ever since. When can we see him? Emma asked, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. Soon, Keiko promised. I've already arranged for us to fly to Seattle this weekend, but Emma, there's something you should know. Your father doesn't know about your special abilities. He's going to be amazed by how brilliant you've become. Emma pulled back from her mother, her face serious. "Will he be proud of me?" "Oh, sweetheart," Sarah said, cupping Emma's face in her hands. "He's going to be so proud he won't know what to do with himself. And Emma, we're going to be a real family again. All of us." Emma looked between Sarah and Keiko. "All of us, even Tanaka-san." Keiko started to protest, but Sarah reached over and took her hand. "Especially Tanaka-san. If she hadn't come into our lives, we might never have found your father. And besides, someone needs to keep teaching you Japanese." That weekend, in a small coffee shop in Seattle, David Johnson looked up from his newspaper to see a beautiful blonde woman walking toward him, holding the hand of a 7-year-old girl who had his eyes and his stubborn chin. Behind them walked an elegant Japanese woman he recognized from dreams he'd never been able to forget. "Sarah," he whispered, rising from his chair with tears already streaming down his face. "Hello, David," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I'd like you to meet your daughter, Emma. Emma, this is your daddy." Emma stepped forward with characteristic confidence and looked up at the man she'd wondered about her entire life. "Hi, Daddy. Watashi wa Emma desu." "Nice to meet you." David stared at his daughter in shock, then looked at Sarah, then at Keiko, then back at Emma. Did she just speak Japanese? "That's just the beginning," Sarah laughed through her tears. "David, our daughter is extraordinary, and we have so much to tell you." As the four of them sat down together for the first time, with Emma chattering excitedly about her studies and David marveling at the brilliant child he'd never known, Keiko reflected on the impossible chain of events that had brought them all together. Sometimes the universe conspired to heal old wounds through the most unlikely angels. And sometimes those angels came in the form of 7-year-old girls who saved lives with kindness and brought families together with wisdom far beyond their years. Emma Johnson had indeed changed all their lives forever, but the greatest miracle was that in healing others, she'd finally found the complete family she'd always deserved. The little girl who taught herself Japanese to help her mother had taught them all something far more valuable, that love, forgiveness, and second chances could overcome even the cruelest separations. Their story was finally complete.